Welcome, everybody, to another episode of First and Nole. It's been a minute. It's been a couple weeks since the last time Roberto, Aguayo, Curt, Weiler, and myself, Ariya Massoudi, talked with you. And the Florida State Seminoles now 5-3 on the year after the bye week, beating Georgia Tech 41-16 in Tallahassee. The Noles just needed a win, and they needed to get back in the win column. Curt, we're going to start with you straight off the bat. It wasn't the prettiest of wins, but that locker room needed a game in which they were in command and control for the full 60 minutes. And Florida State really was.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think it's definitely a case of that being a good team to play coming out of a bye, whether it was bye week rust, whether it was whatever you equate it to. There was a little stuff they had to work through before they really got rolling. But I mean, once they got rolling, there was not much. Georgia Tech was going to do 24 yards of offense in the first half for the Yellow Jackets. A really good start, really good. I mean, really good throughout, really, for the FSU defense. Fabian Lovett being back there makes a big difference. And yeah, I mean, the offense had a few mistakes, had a few turnovers, and still scored more than enough points. So it was a nice potential tone setter for the stretch ahead, like we talked about on the last show.
Yeah, and Roberto, we talked too about how Florida State was not far off in their three losses, whether that was to Wake or NC State or Clemson. They showed signs of life when you look at the stats. So you knew that they were going to be able to hopefully start that second half of the season on a positive note. And they got an opponent that I think was a little bit weaker than when the season started. But the Noles did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they played pretty decent football for 4 quarters.
They did. I mean, like Curt said, they started off a little slow, but they came out, and once they got it going, they dominated. And I mean, it could have been a lot worse if we really look deep into it. But a win is a win. From my experience, no matter how you shake it up, no matter what happens, at the end of the day, if you come out with a W, it's fine. The coach is going to be fine. He's going to be like, yeah, we didn't do this good, we didn't do this good, but we came out with a win. That's ultimately the number one stat at the end of the day that you want to have, and we had it, and that's all that matters. Now we go into Miami, polish up some things, and we'll see. I mean, Miami isn't looking all that great either, but it's in Miami. It's a rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm excited to see that, especially down here in South Florida.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Florida State did whatever it wanted to offensively, at least between, the 20s, as they say. It was like the Noles could kind of pick, I think, in this game, their score, which I think is where some of the frustration might have lied from some of the fans and from some of the media members. Because, 41-16, I think Florida State in between the lines blew out Georgia Tech even worse than the score indicates, which is what makes that a little bit head scratching the final score. But a lot of mistakes in this one too. And I think those are things the Noles are going to have to clean up as they get into this Miami game and going on the road to Q's2.
Yeah, 642 yards of offense. If you told me going in that that's what Florida State was going to end up at, which I think was their most since 2016, I want to say. It's been a while since they had that level of offense, especially against an ACC opponent. But I would have thought they had more than 41 points. I would have thought they broke 50. I would have thought, maybe even in like a 55-ish neighborhood. And yeah, they did waste a few chances. I mean, a few drops, really, and a lot of them early, I should say. A few drops that killed the first drive, including a fourth down go-for-it attempt. The Wildcat fumble on the goal line. I mean, some of that is a situation of, I think, Mike Gravel, I think people have gotten a little frustrated at times with how he has called on the goal line, where it's a lot of the jet sweeps, it's a lot of Wildcat or things like that. Not necessarily trick plays, but just not straightforward running up the middle. I think Florida State's, I think the offensive line is improved. I think the blocking as a whole is improved, but that's a tough place to run. And I wonder if some of that comes from uncertainty, if he can just kind of straight up run consistently in those situations. So obviously the Wildcat backfired. Credit to the defense for not letting that really steamroll, because that's such the weird sudden change when the defense probably thought they were about to be playing with the lead and all of a sudden get thrown out there deep in their own end after that long fumble return. Credit to them. I mean, really, like that was for the entire first half of just the adjusting so well to the sudden change, shutting things down, holding to a field goal. And I mean, pretty quickly from there, Florida State did take the lead. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it was only 7-3 after a quarter. When you look at the yardage, I think, let me pull up the yardage real quick. Florida State outgained them 131-3 in the first quarter. So they dominated the box score, but it was 7-3 on the scoreboard. So yeah, wasted opportunities, especially early. Thankfully you're playing a team that wasn't exactly fit to take advantage of them.
600 plus yards. Berto looked like a stat sheet from your playing days with Jimbo here. I mean, you guys put up 500, 600 yards pretty easily, but Curt's right. That first quarter was pretty tough because you drive the ball at will against Georgia Tech. Then you end the first drive with a couple of drops and a turnover on downs. And then you get all the way down to the goal line and you fumble, which we've seen already a couple times this season in key moments. And so that can't continue to happen because you and I have talked about it. It's sometimes about facing yourself. You're not really playing the opponent. You're playing a faceless opponent and you're staring back at the guy in the mirror. That's got to be the next step for FSU if they want to continue to climb and finish this season strong.
Yeah, and when you look at the box or the game comparison, the stats, without seeing the score, you would have thought, Florida State would have put 70, on Georgia Tech. And like we started off the show, it's a win. Everyone's happy, But at the end of the day, if they really look at themselves like in the mirror, you can't start out like that and make those mistakes against a really good team, as we saw, the last 3 games. If you make that mistake early on, they're going to take advantage of that, and they're going to make the most of it. Thankfully, Georgia Tech wasn't that tough of an opponent. We were able to mask those issues and those mistakes, and we ended up coming out and winning. But like we could have done a lot more with what we had presented. I mean, we had 2 turnovers versus them. They didn't have any turnovers. Yes, we had a lot of total yards. I mean, 642. That's great, but I think we know that we can make plays and we can, have those big gains, big yards, but we still have too many mistakes and not capitalizing too much, like in the red zone where we fumbled. That we can't have, in the rest, no matter who it is, right? No matter who the opponent is, as long as you play a mistake-free, a few mistakes, there's going to be mistakes made, but if we got to capitalize in the red zone. We can't have turnovers. We don't know where they could go, right? So I think finishing off the rest of the year, if we can just minimize those mistakes, convert inside the red zone, and not really just capitalize on the chances we have, I think that's a win in turn. I'd rather us this score be 41-16, but we had 0 turnovers. We capitalized on every chance we were in the red zone, whether it was field goal or touchdown. Then we did the right thing, right? So, there's a lot of good and bad in this game either way, but we just have to tighten those mistakes up heading, into the later part of the season, especially into Syracuse.
I would say especially into Miami. I think looking into the near future, I think a first quarter like that with the mistakes would be just what that team that's been really struggling needs to kind of feel confident, and what that fan base that shows up for one game every other year with a Florida State game, what they need to really get invested in that game and think their team has a chance.
Yeah, guys. I mean, I'm looking at just we talked about the stats and the numbers. It's not an apples to apples comparison, but I got kind of curious. So I pulled up some of these stats from 2013 when Florida State would put up 600 yards routinely. Let me give it to you guys, right? 617 yards against Nevada back in 2013. That totaled 62 total points. Against Idaho, 645 total yards, 80 total points. So when you get that many yards, like the correlation is usually, like Berto said, in the 50s, in the 60s. I mean, in that one game, I've never seen a football team score 80 with my own 2 eyes, but that happened that day. It was incredible. Yep. I do think there was also a defensive touchdown, though, in that one, too. I think it was like a scoop and score or a pick 6 against Nevada from the defense, but against Idaho from the defense. But, yeah, too many mistakes, guys. And it's, it was frustrating because it's out of a bye week. One of the guys, they got rested up. They went over some of the errors that had plagued them. And early on, it looked like Florida State was asleep for a noon start, right? Like they were dropping the ball, like Curt said, against NC State. Very similar type of game. It's just you're not playing an opponent that can make you pay for it. And so Georgia Tech, perfect example, picks up the fumble, right? runs it back to the 20 for Florida State, and they're not good enough to be able to capitalize and turn that into 6. Like, their offense is horrific. They've got so many problems themselves that they ended up going to their 4-star freshman quarterback, Pyron, for large parts of the second half, and he looked pretty good. So I do think those are the negatives. You fumble a couple times. You're not as clean and efficient as you want to be. I think second half, Georgia Tech they pushed the ball down the field one too many times for my liking against Adam Fuller's defense, who still had starters in. But I don't want to harp on the negative in this, because I think FSU needed a win like this. They were in command. They were in control. And more than anything, Curt, to me, I didn't get the feeling that Florida State regressed, if that makes sense, in this football game.
No, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I would say there were starters here and there, but especially as the half progressed. I mean, the main one that I think Adam Fuller felt like was most frustrated with was the out of halftime, the onside kick getting thrown out there and allowing that one. But I know as the half progressed, there were less and less starters. I think by the time that final drive happened, when they scored in the final play, there were like none. Yeah, no, I think there was a lot to be encouraged by. I mean, that offense keeps kicking tail. It is something to watch. I mean, I think we've known that this offense was better and more talented, getting closer to where it needed to be. But I still think there's a decent amount of room to improve. And still here they are. I mean, they're averaging over 7 yards a play. I think they're like 13th nationally, 11th nationally, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think they're averaging the most
11th.
yards per.
You're right.
Yeah,
11th.
the most yards per carry since 1995. They're averaging, and honestly, looking at who's left on their schedule, you don't really expect that to fall off. They're not playing. I guess Syracuse's defense is pretty good, but it's somewhat susceptible to the run. So I mean, they are a really, really impressive group and offense on that. And I mean, Jordan, it was a nice bounce back game, I think, for Jordan Travis, having a career high, nearly hitting 400 yards for the first time after he didn't have any, I don't think, outright bad games over that losing streak, but I think he felt like he wasn't himself, or he wasn't kind of maximum Jordan Travis.
Yeah. I think, too, the way he came out of the gate against, Duquesne and LSU, people might have in the back of their brains maybe jumped Jordan a couple of pegs in the tiers of elite quarterbacks. And I think the fan base has had to take a step back and a breath and say, all right, Jordan's a much, much improved football player. You have to credit how much he's worked on his passing game, his reading and making progressions, doing a good job of being a leader. I think all of those things are undeniable and are 110% true. I think his limitations are still there, and maybe these last few games started to show a few cracks of just what those limitations are, especially when you play, Clemson and NC State, who have excellent defenses. So, Jordan's, I think, in this one, career high in passing yards, so you can check off another box in his personal career. I'm very proud of him, really am. This summer, a lot of people were doubting whether he could even be a quarterback at this level and help Florida State, make the real progress. And he has. But no doubt, Curt, he's going to have to play I think at a little bit of a higher level to knock off some of the teams that Florida State's about to play. And truthfully, when we talk about legacy, Curt, when we talk about legacy, and Berto, if you could chime in after Curt on this, you are judged as a player by how you do against your rivals. So you got a couple games coming up where I think he's going to have to be at his best.
4th and 14 was kind of, it felt like when he really got put on the map. I mean, that's probably the defining moment of his Florida State career to date. That, or maybe just the overall LSU performance. I don't know if there was one play from the LSU game, but yeah, I mean, I think 4th and 14 was a huge moment for Jordan, for his confidence, for a lot of things. I mean, obviously that's the hometown team for him. That's, I mean, not directly hometown, but in the neighborhood. He's a South Florida kid from West Palm. So yeah, it's, I mean, I think this is a big chance for him. I mean, we forget 2 years ago, Jordan was a starting receiver in that game down in Miami, the 52-10 loss. The game Norvell wasn't at because he had COVID, but a lot's changed for him, obviously, in 2 years. And I mean, if he beat Miami and beat Florida, which you're going to be favored, I would expect in both those games, you're favored against Miami by a touchdown on the road. Yeah, I think that's big for him. I mean, he has an interesting situation kind of to go into this off season. I mean, he came into the year, I know at ACC kickoff talking about how he thought he was gone, or imagine this would be his last year. I wonder if that can't be dissuaded with some thoughts over what one more year might be able to do for him.
Yeah, I think going back to where it's a Miami, it's a rivalry game, and what really a lot of people forget to really look into is that a lot of these guys grew up together playing, at Miami and then at Florida State. A lot of them came down from South Florida, and there's a rivalry. There's a rivalry, yeah, between FSU and Miami, but there's a rivalry internally with the athletes because they a lot of them know each other. So it's bragging rights for a whole year for us in Florida. Like you hear it all the time. Like when I grew up, like, oh, Florida State won, we had bragging rights for a whole year. So we're gonna want to come down there and we're gonna want to beat them. It's the same way with them. So it's gonna be this. I think the spread and everything doesn't really live up to what really in between the trenches and what it's going to be on the field. So it's an important game for us. So we got to minimize the mistakes. We do well. We can, make the throws. He's developed into a great quarterback. We can do, the things we need to do. It's just minimizing the amount of mistakes that will help us in big games like the one coming up or, at Florida or, versus Syracuse. But, I think he's played very well, and, we'll see what happens.
Curt, how fun is this rushing attack to watch when those guys get going? And, they got worn out, but Benson continues to just show. I mean, it's sneaky elusiveness for a guy as big as he is. He keeps his legs churning, he's hard to take down on the first hit. And then you talk about, I think Toafili's taking steps forward, not just as a ball carrier, but he's such a weapon in the passing game for Florida State. I think he's going to be huge against Miami. And then how about the story of CJ Campbell coming back in there and Rodney Hill? Like it was really cool to see. But Norvell coming into Florida State, you knew he wanted to run the football and do it at a high level. And I think FSU's done that for the majority of this season, especially with all the weaponry that they do have back there.
They've really done that throughout his tenure, even when there wasn't kind of that consistent passing attack in 2020 and 2021. I think this year, as they've been more balanced and as they've had success through the air, I think you've really seen that do wonders for the run games, with defenses having to kind of take Jordan Travis's arm legitimately and kind of like let that affect how they defend things. But yeah, no, I mean, Trey Benson remains, I think, the national leader in broken tackles per carry, where he's like among the national leaders already and has done it on a lot fewer carries than the Bijan Robinsons and those type of people. He's really impressive to watch. Lawrence Toafili, like you said, it's been a great bounce back year for him after kind of banged up and just didn't make the most of that sophomore year after a really good freshman season in a smaller sample size. And he kind of got the ultimate ball don't lie touchdown. The Johnny Wilson offensive pass interference, where you were like, you watch the replay and you're like, wait, that's offensive pass interference? I think Norvell today said we wouldn't want to know what he said to the ref after that penalty was thrown. But the very next play to hit Lawrence Toafili, they got Lawrence Toafili matched up with the defensive lineman, which I would say is a mismatch, shall we say, and for his score there. But yeah, and then you talked about, CJ Campbell's a great story for a guy who in August we were told his season was over. And then Rodney Hill, depending on how these guys go, like how decisions with these guys go after the season ends, over if anybody were thinking about the draft, Rodney Hill's probably gonna have a big role as soon as next year. He's a real kind of like a bowling ball, just like not the biggest guy, but it's really tough to bring down, just a really tough runner. And it sounds like they might get Trayshawn Ward back as soon as this weekend. He practiced Friday apparently, and I think Norvell said today he's hopeful that he might be available this week down in South Florida.
Without a doubt. And CJ Campbell, such a great story, from out for the season, breaking his fibula to getting in the game. It was cool to see him effective. He still had some burst, a little bit of wiggle, and he's such a great story. And Berto, maybe in the past, Florida State's they've had Dalvin Cook, they've had Cam Akers, but this two-headed, three-headed monster that Florida State has had when fully healthy feels awful lot like some of the running back tandems and trios that you played with at Florida State.
Yeah, these guys are just as dangerous as the guys that I played with, the Devontae Freemans, the Mario Pender, Carlos Williams. I mean, you can just keep naming them. It's you put one
James
in
Wilder,
there,
right,
yeah,
too.
James Wilder. You put one in there, or one comes out, you put another one in there, and it's like the same thing. So it's good to have a trio like that as a defensive coordinator. You see that, and you're just like, man, like we can't just stop one guy. We got to stop three guys, and they get rest when needed. It's good to see, and it helps the passing attack open up. Every position group helps out the other position group. I mean, Johnny Wilson made some great catches, some tight, contested catches. He ended up with 111 yards, only 3 catches and a touchdown. I mean, everyone, saw the ball this weekend, and you hope to see that in the rest of the season where you spread it out. But I don't know. Will we see Trayshawn Ward back this week? I would love to, but he doesn't have to because we got two guys there that can, get the job done. So, but I know he wants to get out and play. So, I mean, we'll see. But we're going to need him eventually this last half of the season, whether it be this weekend or the week after and heading into the rest of the season. But we'll see. But it's good to see a running attack like that. I mean, we haven't had that for a while. I mean, since Dalvin Cook, and Dalvin Cook was really the spearhead. I mean, now we got 3 guys that can all do, pretty much the same thing. But it's like the Alabama team when they had what's his name? They had Derrick Henry, then they had number 17. What was that? I played with him in the league.
Is it Drake?
Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon
Drake, Derrick Henry, and they had another guy, but it's just like, man, like all these guys are good. And I mean, if they keep playing like this, all of them will end up playing in the league together. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I mean, you had Ingram and Yeldon at Alabama too. So I mean, they've had some duos and trios, but this is the deepest Florida State's running back. The backfield is, I should say, for Mike Norvell, and certainly in a while. The receiving core too, I think, has gotten a boost from getting Ja'Kai Douglas back. Curt, it's great to see him healthy and playing at that level because he kind of is that hybrid running back, slot wide receiver that can be so effective for you in a variety of ways.
Yeah, he has definitely brought that spark. With 2 touchdowns in 2 games back, and it's just another weapon. I mean, I think you look at how many guys got involved in that area. I think 10 guys had catches. I think 5 guys had 3 or more catches. It was something to behold with how Jordan Travis, got the ball around. I think he said it was Jordan said it was his most fun he's had in a game this season, just with how many different guys he had and how they were moving the ball up and down the field. And yeah, I mean, Ja'Kai is just another weapon to complement the Johnny Wilsons and the Micah Pittmans and the Pokey Wilsons and the Kentron Portiers and the Deuce Spans. I mean, the list goes on, and it's another throwback to Roberto's time. It feels like it's been a while since you had that many guys in the passing game who you were just like, you can count on this dude to make some plays.
Right, and that's what Florida State's going to need, I think, for Travis here over the next, I don't know, a couple of weeks. You're going to need those receivers to step up. I like the Berto mentioned Johnny Wilson with the big catch, because it felt like Johnny at times was back to kind of disappearing in big moments, and getting him used. It was cool to see him flash the ability on his resume to catch the ball and be able to elude some would-be tacklers, and he looked good in the open field. So good at that 6'7" height to be able to move the way that he does. I'm not calling him Mike Evans. I mean, that's not the comparison, but you get like ideas like of, oh man, that's what Mike Evans could have looked like at Texas A&M. You're like, that's our knockoff brand version.
I mean, he's only a redshirt sophomore, so he still has time to develop.
Point is, guys,
he might be going.
Yeah, somebody in the NFL though, a scout went check on that box.
Yeah.
Berto, let's not give.
We don't want to say that. No, he still needs time to develop. He's not ready.
You were there for your whole college career too, right? You stayed till the
I could have stayed another year.
I
wanted the year to leave the year before. But
side note, and I'm genuinely curious, Berto. If NIL was a thing, like officially
Ooh.
available, open, marketable, would you have considered staying in school for an extra season?
Now what I know now, yeah, I would have stayed another year for sure. Not just that, but like, you can only be in college, at that age. You can't go back. If you want to go back, I'm 35, I want to go back to school. It's like, no, you can't. Like, and Coach Fisher would say it, but when you're in the moment, you want to go and you want to leave and you want to, do bigger and better things. But you're only going to be able to play for the university, for 3 to, if you redshirt, you can be there for 5 years, get your school paid for. And with the NIL, yeah, no brainer. I would have stayed.
Yeah, interesting enough. I mean, I've asked a couple of former players that if NIL would have made that big of a difference, and some of them straight up said, yeah, that would have been a game changer. Guys, defensively, in this game, it was good to see Leonard Warner play at a high level. It feels like a guy who's gotten lost in the shuffle at times, and a couple of young guys too. Curt, I thought really shone bright in this one.
Yeah, I think it was I think it was John Papuchis, not Adam Fuller today, talked about how Leonard bleeds garnet and gold. And I think that's the thing that's thrown around somewhat. I think Leonard Warner pretty clearly does bleed garnet and gold. I mean, he's a 6th-year senior. He was a starting linebacker a few years ago, lost that job, kind of got moved to be a defensive end before the 2021 season, but then was hurt and out the whole year and still stuck around for that extra year to kind of get to play a role and get to end the career maybe a little more on his terms. And I think he's made an impact. I think it begs the question of what he could have been, or if he would have had maybe a more impactful career if he'd been moved to defensive end sooner. It seems like a more natural fit for him. I mean, I think we definitely obviously have to talk about not a younger guy, but the impact of Fabian Lovett coming back. I think you look at the box score, he only had 1 tackle. He only played, I think, 25 plays. But what he does for everyone else, the attention he commands and what that does for everyone else, I mean, that'll be, especially if he's available to play more on Saturday, which I would expect to be the case because I know he came out of the game pretty good health-wise. I think it makes a big difference going against a questionable offensive line, of which kind of there are a few of those left on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, there's some guys too that continue to play at a high level. Jared Verse, it seems like he's getting healthier. He played pretty well. Jamie Robinson continues to rack up tackles, and I think they're showing his versatility, by the way,
yes,
and the different things that he can do coming to the line of scrimmage.
Linebackers had a great game too. I think I shared a clip on my Twitter last night of Kalen DeLoach. When he closes, like his top speed, he closes like a missile, man. He is fun to watch, and I think Tatum Bethune is a very, very impressive as well.
Tatum Bethune's got NFL written all over him. I mean, that kid's going to play and Kalen physically, yeah. I think it's good to see good like solid linebacking play, guys. Like I mean, it's been a minute since FSU's had a good unit, and I think it's nice to see like you're putting less pressure on your D line and your secondary, so it's good.
Feels like the Titanic gif. It's been 84 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
it feels like it.
It does what it does feel like. As someone who's been covering the team since 2015, yeah.
So I think overall, though, trying to break down any more of this game very difficult. Georgia Tech sucks, and I think that needs to be said.
What we should say?
What?
Good for Ryan Fitzgerald.
Yeah,
I think he's 3-3 in his last 3 games.
I don't want to acknowledge it. I don't want to acknowledge it.
He's just flying under the radar.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything. No one talked to him.
As a kicker, that's how you want it. You fly under the
radar. It's like a pitcher, right?
Fine with that.
Yeah,
like a pitcher who's doing well in the game. Go sit at the end of the bench. Everybody avoid him at all costs.
Yeah.
Everyone tweet at me if he misses his first one on Saturday. Is basically what I'm saying.
And you don't want to miss against Miami. That's
so.
Definitely That's
wide right 11 or whatever. Yeah. I mean, you know what? Miami fans can say whatever they want because their program right now is laughable.
In shambles.
It's wide left. It's in shambles. It's wide left. It's wide right for they stink. And I think we need to make that transition. Yeah. Let's make that transition and talk about that game, guys, because coming into the year, I think a lot of people circled that game as, obviously the rivalry, but also that's a 50-50 game at the time. Some people even lean Miami. They're like, oh, Cristobal is going to have them further along. Tyler Van Dyke's back. He had a really great first season. when he was in the spotlight. Naturally, the Hurricanes should be better, but not so fast, because now we look, and I think FSU has the line moved to -8.5 or -9. It started at -7, and I think I think people might bet Florida State to -10 on the road, which, if those of you who follow betting and wagering, that would mean FSU is a big neutral site favorite and an even bigger home favorite if it was at Doak. So
Huge. Yep.
Vegas has a lot of confidence in Florida State in this game. Anything can happen in rivalries, guys, but before we even get to the matchup, it's one of my favorite games of the year. Berto, what was it like being in between the hedges and the lines and just being in those stadiums in that rivalry?
Oh yeah, I mean the rivalry is real. We hate each other. I mean, I remember 2014 when was it 14 when we were at home, and
yeah, it was.
I'm going to kick on in my field, but I'm kicking at the away side. We always do that, kick the away side first, and then I end up on the home side and then finish kicking there. And they're just out there. They weren't doing anything. They just wanted to start something. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm over there, kicking, and they're like, someone threw a ball at me, and it hit the back of hit my back. And I turn around, and they're like, you ain't allowed over here. Go get back on your side. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, this is my field. Like, I can do whatever I want, basically. Like inside, you're just like, oh my gosh, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even remember like if they were that. And I'm like, no, like I can go kick over here. Like, what are you guys doing? Just, you know what I mean? Like, trying to, you know what I mean? They weren't even doing anything. They were just out there just throwing the ball, like trying to look for something to get into. And but that's the way to do it. Like when they weren't that good of a team, but they were trying to find any way they could get into our heads. They could get in, underneath our skin. And then all of a sudden, I say something to them, they come back, and all of a sudden there's like 5 or 6 guys that flock like this. And then I look around, and I'm like, I feel like that Michigan player.
Oh, no.
At Michigan State, I look back and I'm like, uh-oh. Like, even if I try to swing or I try to do something, I am outnumbered right now. And I mean, I won't go down without a fight. And then I'm like, I look back, and then one of our assistant special teams coaches sees me, and he starts coming over here, and he's like, oh, what's the problem? I was like, dude, they're trying to say like I can't be on their side. And they start shoving me, and it's like, whoa, is this like really happening? Like, this is like our own field. Like, I get it if we were in Miami, okay, whatever, it's away, those are the little advantages you have. But I was like, I'm in my own field. Like, how are you going to tell me I can't kick here? And then all of a sudden, like, we went away, and then like the refs came, and they were like, no, like, you guys, go away. I can finish kicking. But the funny thing is, the guy that ended up, I don't know if it was the guy that threw the ball at me or shoved me, we ended up being on the same team together in LA. And I remember when I got there, it was Rayshawn Jenkins. And I remember when I got to LA, I was like, I know who you are. And I looked at him, and I was like, you remember me? And he started smiling. He's like, yeah, man. I was like, yeah, we had beef at the beginning of the game. He's like, yeah, man. You know what? Like, I had to do something to, like, get you guys intimidated. I had to spark something. He's like, no hard feelings, man. Like, we'll watch that. Like, we're good. We're on the same team now. Football's football. And I was like, dude, I get it. Like, it's the game inside the game. So, but no, I remember when I came back and I went into the locker room, and I told who did I tell? I told one of the O-line or somebody on the team, and they used that to get the team, hype. Like, hey, man, like they try to gang around Roberto, like they try to start something with our kicker, like, and then everyone was like, F that, like, no, like, we're about to beat these guys. So it ended up working out in our favor. But yeah, man, I mean, the rivalry's real. Every time we went down there, like, we would pull into the stadium, and we'd have beer cans, anything thrown at our bus. Like, they would shake our bus. Like, that's the only away environment that we would go, and like that would happen. But you already expected it. You already knew what you were about to get into. All the highlights roll around, FSU, Miami. So if you can't get up for this and get excited, and yeah, we are a 8 to 9 point favorite, but at the end of the day, man, they got to get on the field and play. And you never. I mean, shoot, we saw what Louisville beat Wake Forest out of nowhere, right?
Did
So
they ever?
you never know what can happen. So I think this is going to be a big game, and we come out with the win. That's a huge win for us. So I'm excited.
Rayshawn Jenkins, right? Is that what you
Rayshawn
said?
Jenkins, yep, Rayshawn
You
Jenkins.
should have you should have totally hit his favorite pair of cleats and been like, I didn't forget.
Yeah, right.
As soon as
he's in Jacksonville
right before a practice, you should have just found some way to get back at him and say, all right, now we're even. Right before.
Rayshawn Jenkins, yeah.
Your only game down there, Roberto, I saw, look, it was in 2014 was your game down there. That was, I think, what people kind of call the Jalen Ramsey game. That was he went off. He almost like single-handedly won the game. You also, I should say, 3 of 3 on field goals out to 53 yards. It was, I mean, it was a Roberto Aguayo game maybe too. But what I gotta ask you, kind of, I feel like, what do you remember about that game and Jalen? And just what was Jalen like as a teammate? You were there with
Jalen. I mean, Jalen was great. Yeah, Jalen was great. He came in. I want to say early on in the 2013 season. Yep, making an impact. And 14, I remember like he was just the impact player on the I mean, shoot, we had a bunch of impact players, but like he was if not the top guy. And I mean, he just had a knack for awareness of the ball. Just and the thing is though, like, looking back, you never like, you just thought like he was a great player. Like we were all like young, like you thought that was the norm. Like we're just playing ball. Like we're just like, we never thought like we're good. Like we're, going to go down in history as one of the best, years in a college football team ever. But dude, the dude is a specimen. He's great. I mean, you see where he's at now. He just had very good talent, very good awareness for the ball. Mistake free, locked people down. The size of him, being, at what he's at, 6'2", 6'3" almost, and just able to be a ball hawk out there. That's what you want in a safety. That's what you want a guy on defense. And yeah, man, I remember like we dominated. I don't think we ever like I try to keep it, we're one play at a time. It is what it is. I never try to get caught up too much in the emotions of the game. I had a great game. It hit a 53-yarder. It's really not that hard, I want to say, once you're in the game, because the fans are very far away from the bench. The stadium doesn't really get that packed or loud. It's just really leading up. But once you're in, you just play a good game, mistake free, and you'll come out with a victory. But that year was pretty dominant for us.
It's a lot of fun, right? Every single year when you play the Miami Hurricanes, and there have been some classics. It doesn't matter what the records are. Even look at last year. I think Florida State, just the way that they played in that one, Miami comes all the way back. You think it's over, and then 4th and 14 happens, Florida State. I mean, it was just an incredible football game. And even when the teams are good, when they're not, when both are good, when one's good and the other isn't. And down there is a different atmosphere too, Berto. Like the Noles packed that place out.
Oh, yeah.
You could expect, I think this year, 15 to 20,000 easily could be Florida State fans, maybe more.
There's a lot of Nole fans down here, and a lot of people are going. I'm still debating if I'm going to go, but yeah, man.
How far is that from home?
I probably want to say Miami. The stadium's probably like 50 minutes to an hour, maybe. So I don't know. I we'll see. I might even try to make it down there maybe when they come in. I don't know yet. To see them, because I saw them when they were here 2 years ago, or whenever Jordan Travis played. Would you say played wide receiver? Norvell's first the COVID game.
Yeah,
but he didn't come down because he had COVID.
Oh God, no, Norvell, correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I remember I met him through Zoom, because that was the first year he was here, and I hadn't met him yet. And they were like, hey, do you want to come in and meet Coach Norvell? And I was like, I thought he wasn't here. And they had him on the big old team meeting, the big old Zoom.
Zoom,
And I was like, hey, Coach, nice to meet you. And, he was great. But it's always exciting to play down in Miami. I remember when we would stay at like some place. It looked like a villa, but like it's fun, man. It's close to home. A lot of people, that go to school down here, that come up to Tallahassee, they have friends that are Miami fans, and it's always that rival. Like, oh, Miami this, Miami that. It's like, all right, dude. Like,
it's personal. It's
yeah, it is personal. Exactly. Bragging rights for a year.
Yeah.
So it's exciting, and I know that hurricane, the hurricane flag is waving up in the practice fields right now in Tallahassee. So it's always a reminder, and it'll always go down in the history books. So.
You're remembered by these games. Like this is when,
yeah,
when people remember you as a player, it's usually these games that stick out in the back of their brain after 5 or 10 years, and they're still talking about you. And so, big game. I know it doesn't ever really feel like an away game down there, like we said, because of how many Noles fans are down there. And it's hard for it to be a true home environment for Miami because you're not really on campus. It's it's the Dolphin Stadium. Like everybody knows going in. So it's an interesting game. It feels like a bowl game but you're just playing a team that hates your guts even more than the average team that you're playing. But let's spend 5 to 10 minutes, wrap up on breaking down Miami a little bit and give our expectations for this football game, because it's a Miami team that's struggling. They're 4-4. They needed a win desperately against Virginia. It took 4 overtimes. They did not look good for a second. They're battling injuries too right now. We don't know if Tyler Van Dyke will be available. I'm sure he'll practice a little bit this week, and they'll see if he can give it a go. If not, Jake Garcia gets the start. Ja'Cory Brown is a Valdosta kid who has some wheels on him and maybe a little bit more advanced as a scrambler than he is in the passing game at this stage in his career. But for Florida State, Curt, what are things you're looking forward to seeing from the Seminoles and keys that you feel like the Noles have to hit if they're going to not just beat Miami? Because I think a lot of people are starting to believe FSU might just be able to beat Miami handily.
Yeah, that's the thing with this game. It's always a matter of, especially this year and with rivalries in general, it's the cliche of throwing out the records books, but it holds true for a reason. There are plenty of times where it looks like one team is handily better than the other. How many times did it happen? FSU was handily better, and it ended up being a game where FSU had to kind of grit it out, or vice versa a few times. Last year I think people thought Miami was going to probably win fairly handily, and Florida State beat them at home. So yeah, I think surviving the early rush will be a big deal. I think Miami, I don't care that they're 4-4. They're not. They have not been particularly impressive. They've kind of been in rough ways, like you said lately. I kind of don't. To me, they're going to come in hyped to that game. The fans will show up. Yes, there'll be a decent amount of Florida State fans there, but there will also be more Miami fans than have maybe been at all of their home games this year combined. Miami fans, like Roberto said, show up for this game. This one means something. They just don't show up consistently. But yeah, I think especially the passing game, I think could have a big game, because you look at I think they're dead last in the ACC. I think they're allowing like almost 9 yards per pass attempt. Middle Tennessee State destroyed them in that regard. I think North Carolina did pretty well against them in that regard. They haven't played a great slate of passing teams. They really haven't played an especially tough schedule, and still they've had a few games where they've been pretty susceptible there.
Yeah. To be honest, I think this is like a game that could brew for them kind of mostly like in their favor. Like it's like if you lose, okay, you were expected to lose, but like if you win, like it's kind of like, oh, and they're gonna come ready to play. Like, how bad Cristobal is kind of like trying to make a statement. Like, we started off hot, we were ranked high, and then all of a sudden we're 4-4. Like, he's trying to make a statement. He's telling his guys, like, everything we're talking about right now, Florida State, like, this is your guys' way, like, to get back, make a statement. We beat Virginia barely, but, we got to win. But now we can make a statement and finish the rest of the year on fire, and this is the way to start it. So they're going to come with their A game. They're going to get their sleep the night before. They're going to be staying a little bit longer in that film room, getting ready because they want to. They're hungry, right? And we've played well. We're the projected, favorite by a lot, especially that we're playing away. So I just hope we come in there ready to play. It's going to be a night game. We're going to have time to wake up, get ready, be awake by the time kickoff starts. But it's never a game that you can be like, we're comfortably like, we're going to win, right? If they come in hot and we start out like we did against Georgia Tech, that could be a different story. So, but I know, we've done a lot of great things. They haven't faced an opponent like us. We're good in the passing game. So, we can take care of business if we start off, play mistake free. We can cover the spread easily. But it can be a recipe for disaster if we start off slow, they make a couple plays hot, early on. And then all of a sudden you're going into the fourth quarter like, oh, the game's within 3. And then you're just like, how did we get here? So it'll be exciting. I think it's gonna be a big game.
I mean, emotions are going to run high. They always
Mm-hmm.
do. It doesn't matter. You can tell them in the week, control your emotions. You can tell anybody, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
get in between the lines. And like you said, Berto, someone makes a comment
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't matter. You were in a peaceful place until that man says something. And you know
Yep.
what? Now it's personal. And you know what? It's, you're human. And that's what makes this matchup so much fun is there's history usually a little bit between some of the guys on that team dating back to high school or middle school or whatever. And then on top of it, you're competing. So it's.
Oh yeah. I remember when I would go play and I all the, the thoughts of when I saw, Badia missed that field goal when I was little. And like when I cried, at my brother's party, like all these feelings like come back up where you're just like, I remember I visited them and I was like, I will never go here. This place sucks. So it's like we have to beat them.
You have to. You need it for a year, and that's one of the most miserable fan bases on planet Earth is the Miami Hurricanes.
I mean, I've known people that went to school and they're like, "Oh, what are we gonna go 45 minutes to a stadium where like we can do something else on a Saturday?" Like I'm like, wow, like yeah, like
don't offer buses from campus.
Yeah,
I think they offer buses.
Yeah,
but like people, they're like South Beach is right there. The football game's right far away. Like, which am I going to choose?
Am I going to go to Brickell or like somewhere here? Or am I going to go to this game that's 45 minutes away? Like, there's no student section there. Like, I mean, I never like. There's random people that don't even go to Miami that go to the game. Like, that's their like. I'm just saying.
Y'all ever seen the tailgate lots outside of Hard Rock Stadium, like after a game?
Yeah.
It looks like a war zone. Like literally like walking out of us, and I've been there as a fan and I've been there as media. And this is actually the first FSU Miami game. So non-COVID, the first FSU Miami game that I'll miss since 2008.
Dang.
Wow.
Yeah, that I won't be in person. And I have a good reason as to why I'm not going to be down there. Curt, you'll be down there covering. I don't mind plugging it. I think I should plug it. American Conference title game for women's soccer on ESPN. It'll be yours truly on play-by-play in Orlando this weekend. So I'm excited about it, but I am devastated that I won't be in Hard Rock. But boys, you can rest assured that Saturday night I will find as many Miami fans as I can be around, whether that's the producer, whether that's whoever, and I will be as obnoxious as possible since I don't have to cover the game. And it has nothing to do with me, professionally. So it'll be wonderful. But this is go ahead. Curt.
I want to say this because I do think it's I think so. Alex Atkins was funny. He was talking today about apparently players in that on the team have already been talking about how tough that game was for them 2 years ago. That COVID game, I think it was 52-10 Miami. I mean, there were plenty of problems. It was Norvell wasn't there, and talked about. I mean, they were pretty candid about like those type of games where you have to go through those games to learn the lessons. And this feels like a situation. I'm not picking it. This feels like a situation where if things really went south, you're going to test that Miami team and see if you can't flip that script on them. It feels like there's a direct chance where this game does get out of hand if you take it to Miami early and really test their resolve. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if things were to go that way 2 years after Miami took it to you in their house.
Wouldn't it be amazing And Roberto, I can't remember. I mean, you played twice against Miami and Doak, once on the road. Uh, isn't it amazing when the stadium clears out and it's all garnet and gold, and
Oh yeah.
they're doing the war chant, and
Yep.
Miami fans have left, and it's like, yeah, that feeling of like pure, just we own you. Our flag has been planted in
Yep.
yeah. It's a fun walk out of the stadium.
Wave,
It's
wave to the.
you walk on a cloud on the way out. When you
Oh
go out and
yeah.
drinks after the game, you're feeling great. You're
Yeah.
tailgating. Oh, it's the
When
next
you get to
day's
the
amazing.
locker room, you're just happy. You're texting all your friends back in Tallahassee, or like, hey man, like what are we gonna do after the game? Like we're good. If it's away, like we're flying back on the plane. It's gonna be a party. Like, what are
I
we
can't
eating
wait
after
to
the
see
game?
my Miami friends the next week. Like, I can't wait to see all of them. I give my Miami friends like maybe like not even 24 hours in the group messages, the ones that text me.
Yeah.
I let them kind of simmer. I know they're upset. We try to be gentlemen, and be respectful. And as soon as those 24 hours moratorium ends, oh man, it's I thought you guys were supposed to be the next 82 Dolphins. I thought you guys were supposed to be the national champions this year for the 25th straight season that they claim that they're going to win the title in the summer. I mean, they do that, and it's just like this game. I mean, this game just means more. I think sometimes if you ask some fans, they'll say they rather have this one than the Florida game. I'm serious. There's a portion of the fan base that would agree with that statement.
I mean, it's funny.
Go ahead.
Miami fans last year, they thanked Florida State for 4th and 14 because it got Manny fired and it got a Mario Cristobal. If Florida State beat Miami this year, especially if they beat them somewhat comfortably, I wonder what that pivot would become. I am not one to troll too much, but it is funny how this wasn't a rebuild until the team started struggling, and then all of a sudden it became a rebuild.
I got something from one of my Miami friends this week, by the way, that he goes, it's just like when Norvell got to Florida State and he had to do this. I'm like, no. You don't get to now be rational about, because all I heard when Norvell was struggling in year one was what happened. He was supposed to be the savior, all of these different things. And it's like, it's our turn. I mean, yeah, Cristobal's struggling. He's not this savant that you thought he would be. There are real problems at Miami, guys. We can put away the homerism and the garnet and gold glasses and say, yeah, he's got work to do in front of him, right? And there are things that are not his fault or his doing that he's got to fix. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean we want to tell our Miami friends that. I mean, I'm not texting them that. So this one's big. The Hurricanes have pretty good players still. I think there's some talent on that roster. Parrish is a good player at running back from Ole Miss. I believe he transferred. They've got some talent on defense too, but I think FSU's got to feel pretty good, at least on paper, when they look at the film. When you throw away the emotion and you look at when that game settles in, Curt, I think FSU should be able to do enough to at least come out on the right side of this W column.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think if I were picking right now, subject to change, I'd probably say somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 31-21, and we'll see if it's that close. But I think, like I said, there is an absolute chance where this game gets away from Miami. I mean, Miami is not in player-inspired football. Mm-hmm. Virginia's defense isn't bad, but they just put up 14 points at Virginia. They put up 21 points against Duke and allowed 45. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have had their problems, and they've been pretty severe problems. So there is that non-zero. I think if this game were at Florida State, I would think Florida State could very well win this big. I think the game being at Miami is kind of their one bastion of hope that could be maybe a bit of an equalizer. But yeah, no, there's absolute reasons to feel good. You almost have to remind yourself about the rivalry and all that and how that can change things.
Roberto, thoughts on this game?
I mean, to be honest, if we're down, I think from what we've seen from both sides, I think I would comfortably say we cover the spread. I think we do. With just the 3 losses that we had, we're thirsty for wins. We need wins. We want wins. We won this week big, despite making a couple mistakes where we could have been up huge on them. So as a coach, you say we beat them 41-16, but we could have beat them, by a mile. And we need to do this to Miami. Like, how big of a statement would that be? We beat Miami 41-16. Like that's huge. 2 huge wins going into Syracuse is the week after. Like, that's going to be huge. So if I'm Norvell, I'm like, dude, let's go out and all gas, no brakes. Let's, beat these guys, head back home with a win. And that's that. Like, so I'm excited. The team looks good. We're getting guys back. Guys are getting healthy. I just saw the projected starting lineup, and it has Trayshawn Ward that's starting at running back. Just saying.
Yeah.
So, but you know what I mean? Like, our guys look good. There's no reason why we shouldn't cover the spread. There's no reason why we shouldn't, beat these guys by a lot. So, but like we said, the rivalry game, the fact that it's in Miami, you never know, but we should be able to put a lot on them, and I think we will.
And hey,
Right.
you get bowl eligible with a win. Not a big deal by Florida State standards, but by recent standards,
By
a bigger
recent
deal.
standards, that
And you do it November. What is it? The game November.
It'd be November 5th.
5th. Yeah.
Yeah. With three games to spare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where that feels good. We don't have to be pushing that thought late into the season. Right now, I think people have bet the game back down to -7.5 for Florida State. So I feel like it's, very friendly towards Florida State. And Roberto, I guess the over under that I'm seeing right now is, let's see if I can adjust it and get it back to money line. The total. Oh, they don't have the total yet. I thought it was,
53.5 or so.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought it was, but mine just blanked on my screen. But anyway, would you take over 53.5 or would you take the under?
53, and I take the over.
You take the over.
Yeah.
31-21 would not do that, right, Curt? That would be just under.
You're right. You're right.
Is that my math's not embarrassing, right? That's 52.
No, that'd be like 52. You're right. So maybe I should adjust my score because I tend to agree. I think it's probably. I mean, like I said, I think there's a chance Florida State covers a decent chunk of that on its own. If Florida State got 40, which is now the realm of possibility, that's a good bit of the way there.
Yeah, I think this game's going to be fun. I think it'll go back and forth for large swings. We might see, one team up 2 scores, the other team comes all the way back to take the lead. But I think in the end, I'll say Florida State with a backdoor cover of the spread. Some drive in the fourth quarter that puts it away, where it wasn't like you were breathing easy the whole time, but with a couple minutes left, you can feel good that FSU came away with the win. So I just don't think Miami's good enough. And I know the rivalry plays a factor, but Miami can't beat Middle Tennessee State, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep it competitive. Virginia's a very bad football team. I've watched them play this season. They are not a good football team.
They struggle with Georgia Tech.
Right. Miami got lucky to send that game to overtime. It was 6-3 Virginia with like a minute left. Yeah, Miami's really bad, guys. And I don't want to – we should analyze it for what it is. The rivalry will play a part in it. I think if FSU is as far along on the scale as Mike Norvell wants it to be, he's got to be able to knock off Cristobal in his first season at Miami and a mess of a program down there. So this is one you got to have. I don't think it's excusable to lose it. I think Norvell needs this one. I think he wants this one for recruiting purposes, for bragging rights aside. And it would be phenomenal if FSU came out and took Miami to the woodshed, because that would be a statement and a check mark in the box. You check off a box along the way of season goals and program goals. So all three of us feel good about this. Any final thoughts, guys, before we sign off? We're about at the hour mark. And I think it's been a pretty good show.
Yeah, I think 34-21 FSU.
Okay. And Curt's right around there too. I think he had, right about that. So well done from both of you. We've been testing this StreamYard out, and we're going to test out maybe going live next week after the Miami game. Hopefully a win for Florida State. So either next Monday night or next Tuesday night. Stay tuned to our social media and our website, theosceola.com. We'll take your questions and comments live and be able to have this be interactive with you guys. And hopefully we're talking about the Noles beating the Canes for the second straight season. Let's go. Win streak. We need one. For Curt Weiler, for Roberto Aguayo, we appreciate you guys listening. I'm Ariya Massoudi, and you've been listening to First and Nole.